Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCom at One, and welcome to episode 198. And we had to get on Alex Myatt. We talk persuasion, copywriting, direct response, and the power of words. We chat how can direct response copywriting increase sales for e-commerce stores, key elements of high converting product descriptions and how they can be optimized for direct response, creating urgency in e-commerce copy without coming across too pushy. That's usually the problem. And absolutely lots more in this one that you need to dive into. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this episode so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Welcome to the podcast, Alex. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Richard. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So I think before we get into it, which I am very, 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 very excited about this particular episode because it is a topic that, although I'm not an expert, I understand the value and I am completely bought into the value. So I know the listeners, they should be flipping listening to this one. But before we get into the nitty gritty, can you let the listeners know how you got into the world of e-commerce, sort of bring us up to current times, what you're doing?
Absolutely. So as the topic of the podcast is about, largely I started in copywriting, which for anyone who doesn't know is effectively just writing words to sell things.
Yeah.
That was when I was 15. I did a bit of copywriting for a local dog rescue. I just ended up doing leaflets, and because I was young, they gave me social media. They thought, he'll know. So I started doing that, and I just started to love it, and that's when my passion for advertising generally started. And then throughout the years, started doing freelancing. By the time I was 18, alongside my 9 to 5, I started to do content writing on the side. Decided that I'd just try and get into it without any degrees or anything. Eventually, I bugged enough people that I got hired a few times. Started an agency, just not really knowing what I was doing. And then 5 years later, I'd worked with Unilever and big FMCG brands, a lot of direct-to-consumer stuff. I'd been lucky enough to start my own e-commerce businesses. Nowadays, I'm an e-com consultant, so work with a lot of businesses doing basically upwards of $1 million a year in revenue, anything up to kind of $500 million, and running my own stores as well. So it's been a bit of a ride, but it all started with copywriting and just being a general geek about anything that brought money in, really.
Fantastic. So obviously you got that first piece of work, you're 15, 16 years old?
Yeah.
So sort of hustle springs to mind. You sort of out there think, wow, I've really got to I'm interested in the copywriting, and I quite like using the word persuasion when we talk about copywriting.
Yeah.
I think there's I've got quite a catalogue of books at home, which I'm sure we'll touch on, and it's a fascinating topic. But before we get into it, so you're sort of 15, 16, got a couple of sort of local companies that you sort of approached, said, I'd love to help you with this. And they naturally, 15-year-old, they know how to log on to Facebook, Meta.
Exactly.
Started doing the sort of socials for these guys, and then started creating adverts or creating product descriptions. What sort of things were you doing?
I mean, my first great love was actually leaflets and through the door leaflets. So the first thing I did for the dog rescue was literally drop in flyers. And it was amazing because really early on, without realizing it, I was starting to learn the value of direct response, which effectively just meant that I was sending one leaflet out, and I noticed that we got donations in of, say, £200 that week.
Yeah.
And then I'd send another leaflet out the next week, and it'd only get £50. And I'd say, okay, well, what was different between those two? And I started to kind of pick up on, well, these kind of headlines seem to work, or these kind of images seem to be, drawing people in. I wish I could pretend I was a genius at that age, but I wasn't. I didn't really understand the value of it at the time. Looking back, I now realize it was the seeds of what I knew to become direct response copywriting, which is kind of, as you've just hit the nail on the head, persuasion. That's what all good copywriting is about. It shouldn't be about fluff. It shouldn't be about pleasing the person who's writing it or sounding good. It should only be measured by how much money or how many leads or how many conversions has the piece of copy brought in. That's kind of where it all started. And what I found was the more that I gravitated towards revenue for businesses, so for leaflets or for Facebook ads, anything that would bring money in, that made getting jobs far easier. Because it's much easier to persuade a business owner, hey, I could potentially bring in an extra few £100 a week.
Yeah.
with these leaflets that have been proven to work than it is by saying, oh, I would like to make your brand sound a bit nicer or be more in your image. So that's always been a driving philosophy for me.
So you copyrighted your own pitch process, in effect.
Effectively. Again, I wish I could say it was all planned, and I wish I could say, oh, I knew what I was doing, but I got lucky. I failed a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I did things where I worked for free for local businesses, and I said, oh yeah, it will really work, and if it works, you can pay me, and just nothing came in, and I've wasted, you know, £500 of their like printing budget. But I think you need all that because it really does. You know, baptism by fire, I think, at a young age, at the start of your career, really helps.
So when you say flyers, you know, that sort of resonates with me when we think about more traditional print advertising. Obviously, there's various things we could talk about here, but I think, you know, obviously, our listeners now, you know, e-com stores are, I assume 99% of the people listening right now, they're e-com stores. You know, what would you say to those guys about print marketing, direct response with print and e-com? You know, what's the opportunity and maybe still?
Yeah, print is it's such an underutilized arm of any business, e-commerce particularly, for a few reasons. For example, there's a bunch of companies. One springs to mind called Postpilot, mainly operate in the US, but they're in the UK as well.
Yeah.
And they help people run direct mail campaigns. Great company as well. And what you find that is when you start running those campaigns, just sending out to where your target demographic is, flyers or post or, you know, nice kind of first class, you know, thick envelopes, they open them because they're not used to getting that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of junk mail people get now actually isn't much. It's not, people aren't getting it as much as they used to. You know, it peaked in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now where if you get something in the post, especially if it's got your name on it and it doesn't look like advertising immediately, you're going to open it because it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think there's absolutely an opportunity there. And I'd really encourage the listeners to, if you've not tried it, just have a go. Yeah. Just allocate a few £1,000s of budget and just give it a go. You can work with agencies who specialize in doing direct mail, and they'll help you, you know, pick out the target audience, etc. But the other opportunity is partnering with similar brands. So whenever they post something, you know, someone buys a product, in that packaging, put a leaflet, put a slip. And that people really, really underestimate the power of it. The big one that springs to mind is the Virgin Wine Club. They do it with so many different companies. You know, I've had them approach me for a couple of the businesses I've worked with before. Yeah. But it works. It really works for them because, you know, if you're sending out a party box or cheeses or something that's a bit more kind of high class, oh, there's a wine club voucher in there that gets me a free bottle. Why not try it?
It's something we've always done and we continue to do. I literally, signed a check yesterday or made an online payment to our print company for a physical, what we refer to as lumpy mail. I think that's... for invites to the 10th of October, the 200th podcast. You know, and we found it, you know, that type of process, as you alluded to, you know, if somebody gets something in the post, what's the open rate compared to an email?
100%. Not 100% open rate. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. But is just the fact that, especially when you make something not look like advertising, which the best advertising doesn't look like advertising, you know, regard digital or print. So as soon as you have a letter in front of you, you're going to open it. You know. But I don't want to focus too much on direct mail because, you know, that was a big part in the early days for me. But you know, 90% of what I do now is digital, and why I really want to highlight, because I think that there's a misconception about what direct response is. You know, we've mentioned it a couple of times. People have this preconception that direct response equals old style, you know, early direct mail days of advertising, and that's not true. Direct response is not a style; it's an objective. Direct response just means I'm going to show you an ad, and I can tell how you reacted to it. So I can tell how many responses I had from that ad. That is pretty much 90% of advertising out there. A Google ad, a billboard with a specific phone number on it that can be tracked how many calls come through, a letter that has a QR code on it that people scan, a content piece that you have to click an article in to view. Anything that commands a response is direct response. So I don't want people to sit there and go, oh, maybe I should do direct response. You are doing direct response. Everyone is doing direct response. It's just about where do you look for inspiration to better improve your copywriting, your conversion rate, etc., etc.
So now we've cleared that up.
Yes.
So e-com stores listing in, what would you say is the biggest missed opportunity in the industry right now?
I think when people ask these kind of questions, I often see people answer with trends, or they say, "Oh, this thing is working really well at the moment," or this new thing has come up, or there's this trend we've seen on TikTok or whatever that people need to jump on. I would say the biggest missed opportunity has been the biggest missed opportunity for the last 8 years since I've been doing this, and it's offer building. It's e-commerce stores either don't know that they can do this, or they don't think that they can execute it or pull it off properly. If you look at selling any kind of product as a opportunity to connect with the person that you're selling to, instead of just saying, right, well, we have a product, we're going to put a price tag on it and we're going to sell it to someone. People don't really think like that. Money, of course, is an important part of this, but how else can you build around that price tag to make what you're selling seem way, way better to people? And what I mean by that are things like discounts are the obvious one. That's what everyone thinks. When people say offers or offer building, people think of special offers, they think of discounts. That isn't what offer building is. It's not just sticking a discount on it. Offer building is around thinking, how can we make this look more valuable to the person who's going to buy it? That could be anything from free gifts attached to buying it. That could be how it's packaged. That could be what the name is. That could be a bundle it's part of. It could be a guarantee that's attached to it. It could be access to some kind of club after buying the product. And e-commerce stores, I think, either they don't know about any of this, or they go, that kind of stuff should be reserved for SaaSes and for info products and for coaches. But actually, if you take what those other industries are doing and you apply them to e-commerce, the results are astronomical. Just one example, and I've got dozens. Probably my favorite example is I was working with a gluten-free brand where we were selling like a select box of gluten-free treats, effectively. And when I started with them, they were just selling that. They'd occasionally have 10% off, or new joiners offer or whatever. And I just said, okay, let's try something here. As well as selling the free treat as well as selling the box of treats, let's also attach to it a free gift, which is just a digital product, which was the best ways to use this box with ice cream, for example, because they were all kind of like flakes and, wafers. Thank you. So flakes and wafers and things that you could use with ice cream, but it was all gluten-free. So I just said, look, just whenever someone buys it, just give them a free guide. Just say on the thing, plus free guide for this thing. It took maybe like a day for the company to make, just a digital designer and someone it was only like 10 pages or something. And the response, the checkout rate of completion went up by 15% immediately, that's a sustained 15% it went up. That was the same from the first day we did it up until 3 months later.
Yep.
Just that adding a free gift, which we weren't posting. There was no cogs to it.
No cost after you'd done the initial.
You just make it once, and then you just have an immediate page afterwards where it's, you can download here. That's just one example of making the offer more enticing. So for anyone listening, what I would say is look at what you're selling, whether one product or a range or whatever, and just ask, okay, why are people buying this? What is it around this product they're actually looking to get? So if it's something to do with, I don't know, like a back band, right, to kind of like help with back pain, or, something for a chair to help your posture. Why is someone doing that? Well, they're in pain. So also with that product, why not attach a free digital guide for the best stretches to relieve back pain? And it's things like that where you'll find people will start buying just to get that free bonus. It's an easy way for them to justify, it's expensive. It might be like 90 quid or whatever, but also I'm getting this free gift that's going to teach me these. Yeah, okay, right, let's do that.
What about products where it's maybe more difficult to do a digital additional gift? So let's say we're selling... I'm trying to think of something difficult.
But I think that's the point, though. It's so difficult to think of
barbecue.
Difficult.
Here's the guide on how to grill the perfect burger.
There's no reason.
But maybe, I guess, clothing is, here's a style guide. Very true, I guess there's quite a lot. But I guess when it's a little bit more difficult, maybe what what I'm driving at is, we'll have a lot of people that maybe, there's maybe a few instances where it's a little bit more difficult when they've got, say, 10,000 SKUs, which is quite common. Of course, there's categories, subcategories. That subcategory might have 50 barbecues in it. You've got your grilling guide for the 50 barbecues. But what you mentioned a few things at the beginning. There's sort of bundling and guarantee, where you're using direct response, bundling, guarantee, unlocking access to certain inventory, possibly. Maybe just expand on a few other ideas.
Yeah, keeping it simple as well. Anything that you do anyway. So, for example, your refunds policy, maybe something that has been great for us recently, for the brands I've been working with. If you can offer it, just make it clear that there are free returns.
Yeah.
So if you don't like it, we won't charge you to return it. And what you find is most people don't return it anyway. Even if you say you have to return it to get a refund, but you say it's a free return, people are fine with that. They're like, oh, okay, great, free returns. And what you'll find is most people won't return it anyway because they can't be bothered with the hassle. But just shouting about the fact that you don't charge them to send it back is something that they go, oh, that's useful. Because in their mind, it's like, well, if I get it and I don't like it, I can send it back. So all of a sudden the offer becomes safety as well. Yeah.
I guess there seems to be a bit of a switch from quite a lot of, say, apparel retailers where they've started to charge for returns. No, I think what you're saying more is obviously that's going to increase conversion.
Yeah.
And obviously in certain verticals, industries, they won't send it back. But in some verticals, it can be quite tricky if you're saying free returns, where then they order 7 pairs. I have to admit, I needed a new tuxedo for an awards do a few weeks back, and I ordered 4 jackets, 4 trousers, 6 shirts, and I kept 2 jackets, 1 shirt, 1 pair of trousers, and sent 9 things back.
So you're a bastard, is what you are.
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a dick, basically, but I got the perfect, what I thought in my own mind was the perfect set of gear, but that's why I bought from them, to be fair.
Yeah.
And so they still do that, but I know quite a few apparel companies and different fashion brands have started charging a little bit. So it's a little bit, I guess, sometimes not straightforward.
Yeah, it's always a case. I always A/B testing A/B testing is gospel, is king as far as I'm concerned. So anything, we could sit here and talk for hours about ideas and things we could do. But what I would say to every brand is just allocate a month to test something.
Yeah.
See if it works for you.
Yeah.
Because you'll kick yourself if in 2 years you haven't tested anything yet and gone, that could have been 24 tests that we could have run. Have a go at introducing a free returns policy. Have a go at shouting about a guarantee. Have a go at saying if you need to buy, for example, for apparel brands, especially smart kind of upper end rental places for tuxedos, where people are renting one, so they need to make sure they get the right thing. Just say rent 4 or buy 5 and choose what you want, and don't worry, you haven't got. And you can make that part of the offer. You can make saying like get any that you want, and then you choose which ones to keep. For example. I guess the point is, obviously I can't sit here and list what would be perfect for everyone, because different industries, different niches, but have a think about what the person on the other end of the screen really cares about.
Yeah.
It may be because they've got another pain that they're buying this thing. It may be that they have an objection or a worry about, for example, well, what if it doesn't fit? What if it's not quite right for me? Think about the things that they worry about, the things that they want, and then what you can do to easily satisfy that. In some cases, you may even be able to justify, adding cogs to the offer and saying a free T-shirt. Free T-shirts is probably the kind of most widespread example of this that people do. Even like PlayStation did that when they brought the PS5 out. They was like, oh, get a bundle with a T-shirt.
Yeah.
For example, which makes people feel like, oh, well, yeah, it might be an extra 40 quid, but you're also getting these other things. And you go, well, would you pay 40 quid for a T-shirt normally? Of course not. Well, I wouldn't. So I think that the way to approach this for anyone listening is just think about the end user, your brand, and ask yourself, how can I make the experience way better for them? So when they walk away, they go, I can't believe I just got that as well. Yeah,
I think, so if you're with us right now, I think, you probably need to just hit the old rewind for the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes, because I think a lot of the ideas you've stepped through there are just very fundamental to stand out in what will be a very, very crowded market, no doubt. And I think it's something you did touch on, which is going to tie into my next question, I think, nicely, is obviously in theory, we've persuaded people to make that first order with a few of the ideas, and obviously we'll no doubt pepper a few more ideas through the episode. So we've got that first order, but obviously improving that average order value.
Yep.
And then getting them to come back, You mentioned a club, getting them to join a club. So talk to me about sort of improving average order values with, the sort of direct response copywriting, but then how you would then bring in clubs and membership maybe into something and sort of loyalty.
Yeah. Well, the two things I always look at whenever I'm going into any new store is I'll look at immediately at AOV and LTV, which everyone should be doing. That's not new. But the things I look at within that to how to do it, the things that I have seen work again and again and again, I don't think I've ever implemented this and it hasn't worked for any brand. AOV, you need to get one-click upsells into your dynamic right now. A one-click upsell, if it doesn't matter if you're using WordPress, I think that WordPress, you've got plugins like cart flows on Shopify. I think you've got lead cart. I can't remember the exact names of of all of them, but just click in, type in one-click upsell, whatever platform you're using. A one-click upsell is effectively someone who's bought the product and you already have their card information, and immediately you don't send them to a thank you page, you don't send them to a sign up or whatever. You send them straight to a landing page which has another offer on it, which is, depends on what store you have, but could be a quantity offer. So let's say you're buying protein powder, for example. Could just be, hey, buy another pack, but it's slightly discounted, for example. That is such an easy way to increase AOV. It doesn't just have to be bulk offers. It could be the cross sells. It could be another product that makes sense with it. But the point is, because you've just taken their card information, it's one click. And you make that obvious, you're not trying to, bait and switch people. Say, clicking this will add this to your order. Yeah. But all they need to do is press that one button, and then that's potentially another, 20 quid on the profit margin that you wouldn't otherwise have had. Yeah. It's another sale that you haven't had to pay for because they've already just bought something from you. So that's the big thing. But also within that, just adding check boxes to product pages, just saying, oh yes, I would like to add this. Yeah. For whatever it is. That could be, again, like a cross-sell. That could be an add-on. If you actually look at gun brands in America, they do this fantastically. And not condoning ownership of guns, personally, but if you look at their stores, whenever someone buys like a rifle, there are so many attachments you can have to it. And on so many product pages in like rifle stores or gun stores, they'll have add this magazine, this clip, this kind of scope. Yeah. And they do so well because especially when you're there and you're buying something like a gun, which, is pretty cool. And you're buying it because you're like, I want that. You want all the stuff with it. Yeah. Just give people the option to add stuff immediately. Yeah,
I was in a meeting with a client probably about a month ago, and they sell car parts. And, similarly, you're buying a certain part for the car. There's a lot of parts for cars, classic cars. But their checkout, it did have an upsell option, but it wasn't dynamic. So it was a static product, which was a big issue. Big issue. So they're on a sort of custom build platform, so it needed some customization. But I know that's something they're working on now. But it's the simple thing. It sounds obvious. Probably 50% of the people will be like, well, I've got one-click upsell, or I've got upsell in the cart. But probably only 10% of those might be dynamic. Obviously, it depends on what platform. It's a lot easier on obviously the top platforms that we talk about. You mentioned a couple there. But then I think just going in and testing, what is it doing? Is it dynamic enough? Is it really showing the products? Because if you've gone and bought in your example, this product, a gun white, you've gone and bought I don't know the inside of cars too well actually, but you've gone and bought a new a new carbon wing for your M4. You might want some carbon skirts. Yeah. Quite an extreme example.
A carbon wing for an M4 also sounds like a gun thing as well. So there you go, it works, of course.
I think you need more carbon in your life, full stop, personally. But
now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now that's where eCom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real, impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
Okay, so you've got them to obviously buy the upsell, cross-sell. There's a couple of options there in the checkout. Anything else there to add?
Yeah, well, so what I spoke about, kind of, you've got like the pre-sale, which you have order bumps. So order bumps are the pre-sale where that's just a tick on the product page. If I appreciate people have thousands of SKUs, so what I would say, if it's possible in your platform, and if it's not, I would say make it possible because it's worth it. Just pick the top 10 best-selling products because, we all know the curve of how many products actually get sold, what your most popular is versus, 80% of sales are going to these 20% of products. Choose your top 10, 20% of products, or even just 10 or 20 products, and do it for those because that's where the real money comes in. Just make sure they have order bumps on the product page, and then a couple of one-click upsells. If again, I don't know for the listeners, I don't know how familiar they may be with the likes of kind of older school info products, but if you go and sign up for financial publishing newsletters, or health publisher newsletters, and go through their order journeys, even buy something from them, buy a subscription to a newsletter, for example, and just look at what they do on the checkout pages. Yeah. Now, I know that 90% of people will look at that and go, well, that looks scammy, that looks too old school for me, which it almost certainly will be, but you can keep the fundamental of what's happening, and you can change it for your store. And more people should be looking at what other industries do and saying, how can we replicate it? It's working for them. AOV, I would say order bumps, one-click upsells are kind of the two fundamentals. And then you mentioned a few minutes ago the idea of a club or a membership. Yeah. Because I said the second thing I look at is LTV. Now, this, of course, comes into AOV as well because oftentimes increasing LTV is just about increasing that initial purchase as well. But for any store, and I appreciate this can't be a thing for everyone, but try to introduce a subscription offer of some description. And if you're thinking, well, we don't have anything right now that is a subscription offer, I would go so far as to say you should create a product or create a service or a club to justify having a subscription model. Because introducing subscription models to e-commerce businesses, it just changes it changes the game completely. Because not only are you getting more money in, but also you feel safer because you know, well, I'm guaranteed X amount this month. I haven't got to worry, if this campaign goes to shit, I have the club, the membership, the whatever still going. That can be anything from warranty clubs, so for higher end goods, for anyone who's selling like big electricals, just saying, hey, would you like to pay for ongoing maintenance? Or do you want to do a one-time purchase of ongoing maintenance is, an alternative. Or just introducing a club for people who are fanatics about the niche. This isn't going to work for everything. If you're a store and you're selling like shower caps, for example, which is a functional purchase, I don't think you're going to convince many people to sign up for a shower.
You'd have to be a very good direct response copywriter
you'd have to be Eugene Schwartz himself, I think, to make that work.
Gary Halbert out.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I would say, though, is it really lends itself to what I call tribal stores. Anything where you can very easily build a tribe around it. So fishing, for example. Anything that's hobby-based. Just
passionate.
Yeah, exactly.
People.
Just try introducing something where you can offer access to a back end where people share their tips, for example, and their secrets, or you have a course. Something I think more e-commerce businesses should be doing is introducing courses.
I agree. Totally agree. I think the amount of people that will be with us now and their cogs should be wearing what course, community, paid membership, Amazon, the 79 quid a month, a year you pay out. It's probably a bit more than that now. That is a club. At the end of the day, that's about the delivery and access to, access to delivery, access to certain discounts on certain special days and advance access.
I mean, on that point quickly, so I've just been working with Superdrug, and one thing that they're introducing is a subscription delivery service. Because as it stands, you order your prescription or you order your private medicine, whatever it is, and you just pay a delivery fee. But what they've found is that puts a lot of people off. Obviously, no one likes paying for delivery. So instead, what they're introducing, and what's been proven to work as well with some of their sub-brands, is just introducing a delivery subscription. So you pay £40 a year,
Yeah.
and you get everything delivered.
Yeah.
And actually, on balance, that's way more profitable for them anyway. Plus, it feels far better for the person on the other end.
People are more likely to come back. If there's prescriptions involved, obviously there's a lot of repeat purchase anyway, but they're more likely to come back to you.
And it's about adding, again, there's about 15 different topics to cover here, but it's also just about adding the perceived value to someone, both at the point of purchase and after they've purchased. Because if, say, you have convinced someone to sign up for a delivery subscription, just for argument's sake, then every time they reorder with you, you can say you're saving X pound. Deliveroo do that brilliantly. So anyone that has a subscription, not only should you be introducing it or thinking about what you can introduce for revenue, you should also be thinking about it for customer loyalty. And how can I make my customers feel like they're getting a fantastic service because they've shown their trust in the company?
Yeah, I think it's a massive area that is just missed, that subscription piece. I think people say, we can't do subscription in our industry. But I beg to differ in 90%. And there's all sorts of clever ways, isn't it? It could be, you talked about digital products, build a community. There's obviously things like discounts and access to stock, or put it all together, and whether it's a small nominal fee, you mentioned £40, £80, but you start getting tens, hundreds, thousands.
Yeah.
Pull that on a monthly, yearly basis, it soon helps you sleep at night. Yeah.
That's the thing. And all of this, everything we've been talking about for the last kind of 10 minutes, it's all offer building. This is all about, these aren't clever little hacks or tweaks, of like, how can we slightly improve this thing? This can fundamentally change how well your business does. Yeah. This can be just introducing a new product or changing a product. And sometimes it can just be small tweaks to products that change it. But if you change the perception, or you change what you offer to someone, all of a sudden, you can tap into a subsection of your market that you didn't even realize was there, or that you think, oh, wow, people are willing to pay us for this stuff. And so often, e-commerce businesses, they don't do it because they either feel scared to, they think, oh, that doesn't work for us, or they go, well, that's not best practice, But I would challenge that, and I would say best practice is whatever your customers think best practice is. Whatever makes them happy and they want to buy, deliver it to them.
So, slight change of direction.
I think I've taken us.
We've covered a lot of ground, so I'm just thinking how we're gonna. So, all the listeners, the e-com store owners, senior managers, marketeers, and I think a lot of them will have a similar challenge where they've got their 10,000 SKUs. It comes down to, without the product pages. Very strong product pages. You don't have an e-com store obviously without product pages. You have the categories, subcategories, maybe a few of the subcategories, an array of brochure pages, the about us pages, and so forth. And we could cover that. That's obviously very, very important pages around the brand and brand story and so forth. But ultimately, we end up with 10,000. It's an arbitrary number, but 10,000, 100,000 pages that have got products on, and a lot of people selling the same products. So standing out and sort of potentially using direct response to stand out. What would you say to the listeners about using direct response on product pages to really help? You've covered quite a lot of this in a roundabout way already, but I think specifically on product pages, because that's the end of the day, that's the one, that's where you get in the add to cart. That's the difference. That's the page. Obviously, we're going to fill them in with the categories, subcategories, and we could cover that off as well.
Yeah.
But those product pages that are going to get that click, using and implementing direct response, what sort of things can our listeners be doing?
Yeah, so I think if we're using the best of direct response, I think that by extension of being so interested in direct response principles and copywriting, I've kind of just become a geek of conversion rate optimization, which is what this is. It's CRO for product pages. And I will, in a moment, I think I'll list off just like 5 or 10 things that I notice in very quick things. Yeah. So if you're listening and then you hear one of these things, go and have a look if you're doing them or not, because I've run a lot of tests on this. But generally speaking, first of all, a product page is all about, it's not actually about persuasion. As stupid as that sounds, for a lot of brands, it's not actually about persuasion. It's just about confirmation. It's about confirming why the reader is already there. Because so often they've been through an ad already. People don't just rock up on a product page out of nowhere. They've seen something. Yeah. They've seen an email. They've seen an ad or whatever. So I don't want people to think that product pages have to repeat every single thing that has been said, because that's not always the case. And so often you just need to show people this stuff that you were expecting to see, yes, we do this. And here's the things to get you over the edge. So bullets on product pages are just fantastic. If you don't have bullets in your product page, if you just have a one blocker description, you need to change that. Because people look at a product page and they want to see that, oh, good, right, there is free delivery. Yes, this is perfect for my demographic, like whatever it is, the reason I've joined. Yes, I get a free gift with this thing. Yes, it is as durable as I thought it was going to be. Yes, it's got whatever the features are that are important to your readers.
Reaffirming them.
Yeah, like just list them off. Because so often I see e-commerce stores that make their readers, I'll say visitors. So often I see e-commerce stores make their visitors work to find the information.
Yeah. Click. Oh, it's here in this drop.
Yeah,
hiding away.
Tons of accordions and it's just like you need to have done the research on your target audience to know what they most care about, and you need to show that right at the top. Because I'm a direct response fanboy, and I'm fully behind long form copy. I think long form copy is amazing, and the more copy that you can write, the better chance you have to persuade someone because you can cover more objections, etc., etc. So I'm a big fan of long product pages that are actually good and they're touching on things that people want to scroll down and go, oh, but what about this objection? Let me see. However, that doesn't just mean you should have your pages be long for the sake of it. You should be working out what the things that are most important to your reader are and putting them at the top. Because so many people, when they're at the product page, don't want to have to read and go through every single thing again. They just want to see, yep, this is what I was expecting. I want to buy it now. So making it as easy to buy as possible, first of all. Big clashing button. So, I mean like orange, blue, anything that stands out on the page, have your button there. Have it be representative of what's actually going to happen. So for example, if it's going to be added to the cart, put add to cart. If it's go to the checkout, put checkout. I see a lot of people argue for using quite like fancy language on buttons. Every time I've tested fancy language on buttons, the simple one always wins. Just tell people what's going to happen next. Because what you'll find is if you have something like, I don't know, join the revolution or something. I sometimes see on stores, and I understand why people do it. They want to.
I've not seen that one. Join the revolution.
Yeah, just stuff like that. They want to seem quirky.
What are you buying when you join the revolution?
Guillotines and things
scopes
like that
for the gun.
That might work on a gun page. But what I mean is just tell people what's going to happen after they click. Because so often when people are in that state of mind, we're on their product page, they just want to know what do I have to do and what's going to happen after I click. So check out or add to cart, whatever is going to happen, tell them that. Images is a huge one as well. We'll come back to copy in a second. I'll just kind of rattle through things. Images, have at least 5 images of your product, assuming that you have a product that can be photographed easily. The ones that I always find best, the first one is just a blank background with the product in the best way it could possibly be. So extend it out to what it is, no distractions. Then another one with it in use. Then another one for scale next to something that it would likely be used with or in.
So a lifestyle.
Exactly, lifestyle photo. So like in a garden, for example, next to your door, whatever. Depends what the product is, of course. And then diagram images as well. Have a diagram that tells people how big it is. It is insane the number of people the number of times I've done research on, for example, an exercise ball, I remember, and talking to customers, and especially people who dropped out or who had given us their email but didn't check out, asking them, why didn't you buy? How many of them said, I didn't know how big it was? And it's like the company hadn't even thought of like the size of it because they just thought, there's a standard size for exercise balls. We didn't really think we needed to put that on, or it was, but it was in an accordion somewhere. So having an image with the size, even on products where you think size doesn't matter, so many people, I'm sorry guys, size does matter because people want to look and know, well, is this thing going to fit, for example, on my shelf? Am I able to be able to hold this, etc. Point is, for your images, the ones that I've just stated, and also diagrams of some sort, especially if it's something that can be taken apart, for example.
I see that missed a lot. I think diagrams, the amount of times I'm browsing and buying things and the size thing spins through my head and I'm having to dive through the dimension. Dimension. Whereas I know certain clients, for example, going back to the car examples, the big schematics of an engine, there's like 50 things that can come off that. I know they do it. certain client I'm thinking of do it very, very well.
Arrows and centimeters,
well.
exactly. Yes,
some sort of 2D, 3D elements to it as well.
And this comes back to my point, which is that's not about persuasion. That's about confirmation.
Yeah.
That's just someone wanting to go, does it check this box I have in my head? So we don't have to think all fancy and, in kind of highfalutin copywriting terms. It's just give them what they need to see. Similarly, reviews close to your action section. So having like an image of someone who's bought, a photo reel, for example, just with quotes and the stars.
Just pull in some UGC reviews close to the ads cart.
And then just all the basics, things that sometimes I see people just forget, like just something as simple as like a padlock that says secure checkout near the checkout button. Just makes people feel safe. Oftentimes people have the title, the name of the product. Now, for some stores, you need to keep that because especially for like car parts, people need to know what the thing is. But if you're in a one product store, for example, or you only have like a certain range, you don't need to waste the prime real estate of your page, which is the top section above the action section. Don't waste that with repeating like the full name and title of your product. I know some people do that for SEO purposes, but there are ways to get around that. You can still have it, smaller, but have it as an H1 tag, for example. But the point is, that prime real estate, use that for the best review that you have. Use that for the biggest objection killer.
It's more of a persuasion piece than just stating the obvious that they already know, because that's why they're there. They know it's a blue ball or whatever.
Exactly, But and that is like something you certainly can use persuasion on the page for. I don't want to get too much into semantics.
I guess this is where actually, we could have a head-to-head with our head of SEO, and there is the... it's like come on, let's see who wins. But it is very much, we have these conversations a lot, we've got obviously the design side, the copywriting side, the SEO side. There's trying to find that balance, because ultimately, each of those guys, have got a percentage of, what's the right word? Each of those guys, contribute to persuading and the brand and the detail, but it is trying to get a balance, isn't it? I hate, I'm very much an SEO through and through, from 25 years, doing it and running an agency. But I hate to see, obviously, the keywords, just old school, just stuff. You obviously don't need to do that. You still see brands trying to do that. It's just terrible. I think it's more important than ever, the sort of aesthetics over SEO, because you can still get the SEO in there.
It totally. I mean, as you'll know, and as the listeners will know, it completely depends on what kind of store you're running. If you're highly relying on organic search, of course you prioritize that. But if you have a big list and you can send people directly to product pages from an email, then maybe worry less about how optimized the page is for SEO.
So urgency. I think this is one that I see done maybe not very, how can I use the word, honestly? Quite a lot of the time. What's your take on using urgency with e-com stores?
I mean, the first thing to say is just, above all, my principle is honesty. And that's not because of like some kind of, I'm not a highly moral person or anything. It's just a case of, if you dupe someone, they won't come back. And like that is just how... you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's so much easier to keep a customer than to win a customer. So why would you want to win someone and then piss them off? Win them, and then win them again, and win them again, and win them again, and win them again, and they'll come back, and then you haven't got to pay for the ads. Anyway, but for urgency specifically, on product pages, one, like if you're not running out of stock, don't say you're running out of stock, because don't bullshit on these things, because it always comes back to bite you. But in terms of how you can drive urgency, it's reminding people of why they're buying. And that's the key, is that particularly if it's a pain, if it's a big pain that you're focusing on and your product is relieving a pain, especially physical pain, but also, emotional pain, or if it's a gift for someone else, or, in time for certain dates, you can always use that for urgency. What I mean is, if it is a product that can be put to good use immediately, and it's something people have really been missing, they feel like they've been missing out on, they really want, just remind them, like, start using like today or out of the box. My favorite way to encourage urgency, which is like indirectly, subtly encouraging it, is giving people either on the product page or saying that it's a free gift that they get when they order, an immediate setup guide. I wouldn't call it a setup guide, but it's effectively how to use the product once you have it, and give a few examples of it. And even on the product page, I would just say best ways to use or things to do with X. Now, you listening, like, it depends on your store. You need to think about what makes sense for you. For a car part, for example, you can't put best ways to use. It's like there's one way to use it, which is in the engine where it's meant to go. But particularly for an exercise ball, like we were just talking about, have them show how it's going to help perhaps the target audiences, people who have, joint pain, how it's going to help relieve joint pain immediately. And you can say, you can get started with this today. You can download this today and you can start getting used to these stretches, or you can start getting ready for what your routine's going to be.
Which is a genuine thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think one other one, which sounds obvious, but you just don't see enough. We're talking about deadlines and time urgency, just the delivery. As simple as
absolutely.
You've got a countdown as a cut-off when that particular merchant, or you as the merchant, can get that stock out of the door. It might be 5 p.m. today. They're sat on the website at 3 o'clock. Right, you've got a 2-hour window. Right, you can receive this if you order it in the next 2 hours, 1 hour 59. And you obviously see that on the majority of stores, but not all stores.
100%.
Simple. That is a very...
And then,
I had a real problem the other day going back to my tuxedo. I'm there. It was a certain company I know do to 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
it's 9:45. I've got all these different things in the basket. And my wife's like, oh, what are we doing the weekend? And I'm like, oh, we're doing this. And then she's talking about what the boys are doing at the weekend. And I went back to the screen. It was 1 minute past 10. I'm like, ah! And I was watching the clock. I was like, yes, darling, yes, yeah. Missed the flipping deadline.
Yeah.
I could have it delivered to store, but not to my house. So I had to go to the store. Yeah. But I was very much sat there knowing I had 15 minutes, and I think that's a good one.
And that also brings it back to honesty, which is because that is real and that's going to happen. The next time you're like, well, no, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And you have to, for deadlines, for countdowns to be effective, they have to be real.
Yeah.
Because people will know for next time. But yeah, the next point I wanted to come on to was just around anything dynamic countdown wise. So if you genuinely can have a reason to have an offer run out at a certain point, some stores just continuously do discounts, which I'm not 100% against, because for some niches it really does make sense.
Yeah.
DFS have been doing
was as soon as you said it, I was like,
everyone knows
this weekend, next weekend's the final.
But it works, because how often are you looking for a sofa? Once every 5 years?
Yeah.
And guess what? If you go in and you say, oh, they've got a sale on, you're not continuously looking and going, when's the sale on? When's the sale on? So for certain products, especially when it's more just one-time purchases, you're not expecting people to come back too much, you can just run different offers and call them different things. There's nothing dishonest about saying, well, this discount is lasting, or this sale is lasting.
Yeah, there's a new sale, but it is a different
sale.
As
long as you've got a date on there and it's real, and you are going to change it slightly, or the price is going to go back up to something or whatever, that makes sense. But my favorite type of urgency definitely is just reminding people what they can start doing immediately once they have the product, reminding them of why they're buying it.
Yeah.
So that, I would say, when it comes to urgency, is the case. But urgency also just comes naturally from having a product page which is focused on confirming what they need to know.
I think that's what it does boil down to, isn't it? There's they've made it to the site. They've obviously got a list of criteria. It's making sure, as the merchant, you are covering off that criteria.
Yeah.
The imagery, in the wording, in the design. Right. So we've covered an absolute shit ton of ground on this one, and I think what we haven't maybe said, I think will be a really good sort of to wrap it up. Obviously you've worked on a lot of copy, a lot of direct response, worked with a lot of big clients. We've mentioned a few, and I would imagine there's some reoccurring things that you see and go, oh bloody hell, they're doing that. Yes. And I think for the benefit of the listener that's with us now, they've been 45 minutes with us. And if we're going to give them 2-3 big takeaways that you fear they may be doing, that you could probably come along with a couple of hours of your time and change people's lives with some. And I don't want to simplify it, because I know it's an absolute skill that you have. But 2-3 things that our listeners could go to now on their e-com stores that would help them.
Number one. And this isn't actually something we've touched on yet, but it's something that e-commerce stores that need to be doing way more is better utilize your email list. And what I mean by that is, people have talked about segmentation. You've had people on in this podcast talk about segmentation and stuff before. But what I mean is, you need to really be looking at who haven't we contacted in a long time, who has gone dead, who has bought before. Do we have automation set up to capture all those people? Because I don't care how many times this gets said, and I know it's a relatively common piece of advice, but I know that 90% of the people listening to this will not have their email list optimized.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
you need to go and do it, because it's the moneymaker. It really, really is. People who have already bought are so much more likely to buy again than running a ton of ads or putting a load into, to Meta or to SEO, campaigns or whatever. So number one is go to your email list, and here's a specific piece of advice for anyone who's been a previous customer who has stopped by. If you have regular amounts of regular intervals of where people buy, you can use that as a benchmark. But for anyone who hasn't ordered in a while or has just stopped ordering or has only ordered once, do one campaign to them, give them a reason that you're emailing them, use the word because in your email, like we're sending this email because, I would especially say you are one of only 5% of people who've had this email. Again, make sure it's true. But I love using that.
I like that.
In the preview text of an email. Love using that. Just say you're one of the 5%.
What?
Yeah, and it's like, and it's as long as it's true. And then you say you received this email because we noticed like you haven't bought in a while, but you bought this thing. If you can have a dynamic widget within your email, even better.
Does the exact time or percentage?
Exactly. But if not, if you just want to drive to like one specific product, say you're receiving this email because you bought this thing, we think you're going to love this, and we have one sale on just for you guys at the moment, just for people like you. Here it is. Go and do that, and then you can set that as an automation to run.
So that's number one.
That's
number two.
Number two, I would say, and this is for product pages specifically, so let's stay on this because it's something I would love to do. I have got a third one as well, but for landing pages, please 100% times absolutely please use the copy space that you have, the bullets that we spoke about, the description, to focus on what the reader was there for in the first place. And I'm gonna say something which I've only ever revealed in a paid course before, actually. So I'll say it here. This is an Ecom One exclusive. The description formula that I use that has served me for years and is fantastic. I wouldn't change it. I call the copper oxide formula because it's CuO, which is copper oxide, their chemical formula. C is call out. Make sure you are reminding people who this is for. Now, again, they can't work for every product necessarily. However, if it's just a car part, you can say for car enthusiasts. Again, that covers people, or for owners of this make, for example. But for a lot of e-com businesses, especially ones that are kind of in a hobby space, or for people who are vegan, or for people who are interested in a certain niche or whatever, you can just say perfect for like new mothers, right? Or perfect for like busy dads. Got it. Have a call out there as specific that you can get it that person's going to identify with. So that's the call out. Make sure you say that in your product description, just confirming who it's for. U is the USP. Just say why they should buy from you and not from anyone else. Really basic stuff, but putting that on the product page next to your action button, reminding them why this is the only place they can get this kind of thing, even if it's something really easy like the longest serving in this industry, for example, or the only one that has this specific feature, or get our free guide, plus get our free guide. That is still a USP, get this free guide. So if you don't have anything else, introduce the free guide like we spoke about, or something like that, and have that in the USP for your product description. And the last is O, which is objection. Now, if your visitor has a specific objection that you know about, then you put that in your description. You say, well, this is why this objection doesn't matter, effectively. This is what's overcoming it. This is the objection killer. Or if you can't think of any objection they might have, then go for the basics. So, for example, free returns or free delivery, or anything where they go, that's a reason for me to get this now. You can replace that with urgency. Just use the copper oxide formula for every product description, and then a list of bullets underneath it that covers those points we discussed earlier. And there you go. You've got a pretty well optimized.
Love it.
Copy.
There's 3 very, very, very actionable pieces there.
Yeah, I think that the last thing that I would say, and this is a more general point, which I've left till last, quite abstract. Use the theory of cross-pollination. Go to other industries. Within e-commerce, you can go to niches. Also outside of e-commerce, look at SaaSes, look at info publishers, and look at what they do in their advertising. And everything that you look at that they're doing that seems to be working because they're doing it constantly, ask yourself, how can I adapt that for my business? And I promise you there is always a way. And that is the reason I've done so well, is because I've looked at other industries, adapted it for e-commerce and the stores I've been working with, and effectively just invented a new way to get people on board.
Taking something that's working and then adapted it.
Yeah, and it's and so often that's offer building that we spoke about earlier.
That's what most successful businesses do, full stop, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer, a bit like you say, when you see a good bit of copy, or you follow certain copywriters, or you get something in the post. I'm a bit of a collector of. I've got a few folders at home, or a few dozen folders at home. I'll keep that, and I refer back to it. I was a subscriber to Dan Kennedy for many years. I'm not now, but I was. Gary Halbert's Borrow Letters.
Yes, yeah.
Various, yeah.
There's so many things we talk about there, but like again, for example, before I came in today, I was sitting in the lobby, and there was a pamphlet, like a big kind of thing, and it was called, I think it was called something like the Lincolnshire Business Review, something like that. And I opened it up because I always like looking at the ads, and it was such a piece of genius because it's published and it's produced and it's given for free by a guy who does headshots. And the first page of it is an ad saying, you can get professional headshots with me. But the content inside is just about Lincolnshire businesses, and people can pay to be featured in it. But the point is, he's making that free, giving it out to loads of office buildings and companies, and then generating his own business. Because guess what? Like, if you're a business, you might be interested in what's in the Lincolnshire Business Review, but also, this guy's offering headshots, and here's a discount. And I know it's not strictly e-commerce, but it's just things like that where... Yeah. Just think about,
how could you take that idea? What could you do in your business? Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for coming on the show. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Do you have a book to recommend to our listeners?
I do, and it relates to one of the final points I made there, which is the book Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, which is honestly my favorite book that's ever been written about advertising. I might sneak an extra book in if you'll allow me to.
I will.
Thank you very much. But Alchemy, first of all, is Rory Sutherland, for anyone who doesn't know, was involved with the advertising company Ogilvy in the UK, and just a phenomenal person, great speaker, very intelligent, and also extremely funny. The book is all about finding ideas in advertising that on the surface don't quite make sense. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from that book when I approach e-commerce businesses. I don't quite take all of it on board because I do still need to do things that are best practices, and making sure that I am hitting things that I know are going to work, but testing things that might not work, or testing things that do seem a bit weird, or testing things that you've seen from other places. That has been fueled by reading that book and understanding it. So Alchemy is fantastic, and I would just recommend anyone reading it anyway. I will sneak in one more, which is for the people who want something slightly more cut and dry, very, very practical. Probably my other favorite advertising book, I should say, is Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, which was written about 100 years ago. So certainly some of the context has changed since then. But if you're looking for what I believe advertising should be about for most businesses, read Scientific Advertising. It's public domain as well, so it's free. Yes, again, some of the context that it uses is a little bit outdated. However, the core principles that Claude Hopkins goes over and speaks about are just
still remain.
And not only still remain, you'll find that most businesses aren't doing them because they've been taken in by vanity metrics and everything else, whereas Scientific Advertising is about here's how to make money from ads.
Fabulous. Well, we'll link them both up in the show notes. For those that want to find out more about you, Alex, and connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn, I'm always happy to connect with people. I enjoy following people. I also have a YouTube channel called Copy That, which is all about copywriting. So me and three others, Rod, Sean, and Lindsay, who are fantastic. We just talk about everything copywriting, everything marketing. You can pretty much find me hanging out and making videos there at any time. So
fabulous.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. So you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.